First question he asked me was, so, what do you know? Well, I sat there for a second, not expecting that question, and I replied, absolutely nothing.
Hello! You are listening to CPA Career Path Podcast with Rosie Flaherty, CPA MSA. This is episode number 54. We have a special guest, Matthew Markov, CPA, a managing partner at Markov and Malatesta CPAs PLLC. In this episode, we will go over the transition from college to a career, the importance of being a tax strategist, and lessons learned along the way. This episode is proudly sponsored by Chapman University's Archibald College of Business and Economics, located in beautiful sunny Southern California. Are you thinking about pursuing a master's in accounting? Chapman's MSA program is tailored for ambitious professionals like you. With intimate class size and a collaborative atmosphere, you will receive personalized attention from world-class faculty who bring extensive industry expertise to the classroom. Enhance your accounting skills, fulfill CPA license requirements, and elevate your career with Chapman's flexible MSA program. Discover more and apply today at chapman.edu/MSA.
Thank you so much, Matt, for being on my podcast today. Can you introduce a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, thank you very much, Rosie, for having me. I really appreciate you taking the time, and this should be a fun hour. My name is Matthew Markov. I'm a CPA outside of Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm the managing partner of Markov Malatesta CPAs PLLC. My background and focus is in tax strategy, and I describe myself as a tax strategist, not a tax preparer.
I like it, how you put it. It's not just prepare, it's a strategist. It means that you help people to create strategies for their tax, not just finishing the tax return, right?
Exactly. So 99+% of firms out there, clients provide information, and whomever's preparing the taxes takes those numbers and information, throws it into a return, and pumps out a return and gives the client, says, see you next year, here's the invoice and whatnot. But in my experience over the years, that was just not really something that I felt was really right. And part of that's because, well, how does the client know what sort of tax questions might be applicable, or tax deductions or expenses or tax stances to take and whatnot? They're not tax experts. So it never really made any sense to me over the years, and why there wasn't more focus on strategy, or at least digging for questions and whatnot. The firm that I founded here, we send out several question or needs lists, or questions about hey, what about this, what about that, and occasionally a client will say, why do you need to know that? And it's generally because it's not like we're just asking questions like, oh, what's your favorite color, like, because that probably isn't applicable. But we're asking questions because we've seen something in their situation where, in our experience in the past, maybe this other thing applies as well, where maybe 10% of the time. So we ask a question to see, hey, well, maybe you're part of that 10% that actually has X because you had Y, and things like that. So we really focus on trying to provide as much value to our clients as possible. It's not just a sales pitch, it's a founding philosophy. One of our initial principles, if you will, in starting the firm was always to be providing far more value to our clients than the fees that we charge. And that encourages us to look for ways to provide more value, and we're able to charge more than your mom and pop shop because we do things that other firms don't. It's just one of those things. A lot of people do think that taxes are kind of black and white. The numbers are how they are. nothing could be further from the truth. If you really know what you're doing, there are a plethora of ways to save even fairly basic clients a significant amount of money. And they say the proof is in the pudding. To date, over the last 3 years, we have gotten our clients back well over $1.7 million that was left on the table by amending their returns prepared by other CPAs or EAs or H&R Block or Jackson Hewitts or whatever. Sometimes when I look at a client's prior returns from H&R Block, or they, God forbid, did it themselves on like TurboTax or something, I feel like sending TurboTax or Jackson Hewitt or H&R Block a thank you card, like, thank you so much, because you make my job very easy in showing clients how much value that we can actually provide. And $1.7 million plus, and it goes up all the time. It's not peanuts. And a lot of people think, oh, well, maybe it's just, they found one big mistake or something like that. And generally speaking, the way that returns were filed in previous years, in the majority of cases, is more or less correct, right? But not optimal. And so we'll take a different tax stance, or retroactively elect S corp, or we'll find additional deductions and credits that were missed because questions weren't asked. Or there's different tax treatments that could have been taken, or just so many various things. A lot of people think it's just one big thing, and most of the time it's finding 12 small things that add up to that big thing. And all of a sudden you amend a return for a client, and you get to charge a nice penny on it as well, and get them back $20,000, and they are thrilled and over the moon. You've got a client for life, and they refer everyone under the sun to you as well. So we've grown by leaps and bounds over the past 3 years. We started with 0 clients, $0. 3 years and 4 or 5 months ago. And we are selective in the clients that we bring on. This year alone, we have passed on over 40 clients that wanted to be clients, but they didn't really fit our criteria. But we still have, good Lord, somewhere in the mid 500s in terms of returns.
I like how you describe your job. Let's go from very beginning, when you just start in college. Who influenced you, or what made you decide to go with the accounting major?
That's a very interesting story, actually. So, before going off to college, my father sat me down and had a talk with me, and it was the same talk that he had with my grandfather when he was going to college as well. So my father originally wanted to be a marine biologist, ended up being an oral maxillofacial surgeon. I originally wanted to be a paleontologist, and I ended up obviously as a CPA. And so, how did you get from one to the other sort of thing? So my dad sat me down. He said, Matt, do you want to, be reliant on grants and other sorts of funding and whatnot, and always trying to, court those resources in order to just kind of stay alive out there, in the field? Or do you want to be able to provide for a family, have a good life, and have the resources that you need, that at times can help solve problems that need them? A lot of people in this country, if their car blows blows a gasket or something like that, that's a big expense, and they might be crippled from that. And so, which one do you want? Do you want to be a starving grad student, basically, or do you want to be able to afford things in life, provide for a family, and have financial security, basically? I said, well, the latter. He said, great. Well, you can always do paleontology as a hobby. And I was like, that makes a lot more sense. And I do, actually, which is interesting. I've got a bunch of fossils and whatnot. So I still get my fix, if you will, from that. But yeah, so he gave me the choice. He said, okay, well, that being the case, I know what your strengths are. As your father, obviously, been paying attention. So here are really your options. You can be an attorney, an engineer, an accountant, or a doctor. Basically, pick one. I was like, okay. So I went chemical engineering. Yep. So then I went to Drexel University in Center City, Philadelphia for chemical engineering for 3 semesters. And, I did not grow up in the city and whatnot. And I really had a very hard time adapting to life in a real inner city. I really, really, really didn't like it. I like nature. I like trees, forests, woods, peace and quiet sort of thing. You don't get any of that, in a major city. I mean, I had some friends in college there that got mugged on their way to class. Wasn't for me. Wasn't. So transferred out of that, and it put such a bad taste in my mouth. I didn't want to do anything with chemical engineering anymore. So I transferred over to my alma mater, Fairleigh Dickinson University, one of the campuses in Madison, New Jersey. Had all these big old, trees and oaks and maples all over the campus. It was lovely and whatnot. So I went into general business at first because I wanted to kind of figure out what I wanted to do there. And then I had a professor that, and in my experience, this is true. People may disagree. Most professors in college, the way I see it, and I could be wrong, it's my opinion, are only teaching because they can't really do anything else. They can't handle working college. They teach. They don't have a passion. This one was passionate. He, had retired from working in public accounting and whatnot, and wanted to pass on knowledge and guide people, young people in accounting and whatnot. And I enjoyed that class and really the instructor so much that I said, you know what? Why don't I give this whole accountant thing a shot? And so fast forward 20 years, and here I am. And I'm very happy that I took the path that I did.
I like the fact you mentioned that you don't like cities, you like nature. That happens exactly the same to me. I love nature. I live in LA for like 9 months and I hate it so much. And when I visit New York City, it's just so many buildings. I feel like I couldn't breathe. And so I love nature. I love going to campus that has a lot of trees, space, feel like you have some space, some freedom. That's
and where
amazing.
You can go and things are quiet.
Exactly.
It's not something that people who've been living in the city for, a while really understand. They are accustomed to hearing traffic and horns and trucks and trains and sirens and everything. That's just kind of part of life. And then it's kind of strange when you're not in an environment and you're sitting by a lake on a bench, surrounded by trees in the shade on a beautiful day, and you're just sitting there and you're looking around. The only things that you hear are some birds chirping.
Isn't that amazing?
Or, and it's just like, you just listen, and it's so quiet. You hear the wind blowing and rustling through the leaves.
Yes.
And for me, it centers me. It really allows the stress to kind of fall off.
Exactly.
I really enjoy just the peace, the serenity.
Great. You and I, we can hang out. Yep. Now we're talking about accounting in the nature.
Yeah. So we just purchased our first commercial property that we're currently building out. Right now, that's in progress. We'll be in there before 12/31 for you accounting students out there, because we want to make sure that we can do a cost check before year end. You guys can all look up all that stuff. But in getting that building and building it out, it's on the base floor, call it, of the actual building. It's 3 stories. We're getting about 3,500 square feet or so of the bottom floor, and it walks out right into the back of the building, which is actually surrounded by forest, which is lovely. And we're going to be putting a big patio there as well. And we're going to, have like, an enclosure and whatnot. But that way, even at work, you could just go right outside, sit under the, awning or whatever we end up putting out there, a little gazebo or something, and kind of relax, just center yourself. Because,
wow.
I mean, it's just one of those things. I mean, we do things very differently in our firm than other firms, because I remember being an employee. It wasn't too long ago. It wasn't so long ago that I don't remember being an employee and being burnt out, just burnt out. And it's terrible, right? And I never want that for any of my employees. That's why we don't work the 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 really that other firms do. I can go into that at a later point, but the whole point is whatever we can do to help center people that are working for us or ourselves as well to stop the burnout and not let it happen to begin with, is really worth doing. I mean, there's a reason that 95% of all tax errors are made within 2 weeks of a deadline. It's because you've been working a bazillion hours and you're burnt out and you're not giving everything as much clear thought as you normally would. And imagine if you were relaxed and refreshed and didn't feel the weight of looking at your queue and seeing 70 returns in there, And so like anything's, all the things that we can do in order to prevent that. I mean, it's a win-win, right? It's like, it seems almost common sense. Like you don't want errors, right? And so by doing this, you're preventing errors, which is great. That's good for business. And the employees are happier. And that's what we call a win-win. Right?
Yep. Talking about that burnout journey, let's go from very first job after you graduate, go until now that you can avoid that burnout journey. So very beginning when you start for getting the first job, first internship, how was your experience initially as a recent graduate student in the accounting profession?
Sure. It's actually a very interesting question. So my first accounting job, however long ago, was actually at a little firm called Bloomer G. Ryan Company down in Pensacola, Florida. And I started as an intern. Before I started there during the interview process, and this is something that the story I'm about to tell is something that I do in the interview process now, presently, in these days. For new people starting out there, my advice to all of you in terms of your first interviews and whatnot, when you're first starting out, is be absolutely truthful and honest, regardless of what you actually think they want to hear. Be authentic. Be really honest with them. And sometimes it pays dividends. More often than not, it pays dividends. So anyway, I sat down in the interview with this tax manager. And the first question he asked me was, so what do you know? Well, I sat there for a second, not expecting that question. And I replied, absolutely nothing.
Very honest.
Okay. He sat there, looked at me for a second, paused, and then he sat back in his chair, threw his head back, and laughed out loud. Came back to it, and he was like, that is so refreshing to hear, because I know you know nothing. You haven't worked in the industry. I know you know nothing. If you were to tell me all these things that you learned in school or whatever else that do not really apply, no matter what your education is, to the actual accounting field, I kind of know what you think of yourself. So he was using that question to kind of judge, a person in what they are saying versus their self-reflection of being honest with themselves. And I mean, after that interview, an hour and a half after I left, I got a call that I had the job.
That's quick.
Yeah, it's really quick. Yeah. And so, it's one of those things that, again, be honest. be sometimes brutally honest, because as someone who has conducted a lot of interviews over my career, when someone starts touting things, puffing themselves up, exaggerating, or saying things that are probably not, we'll just say, totally accurate, it comes off as very disingenuous, very inauthentic, and that's not really the kind of person that you're always looking to hire. I'd rather someone always be honest with me. On the first day of work that anyone on my staff starts, I say one thing to them without fail, and that is, one sure way to get fired is if you ever lie, cheat, or steal in anything relating to the company at all. As long as you stay away from those three things right there, in that one thing, those three, basically, you're golden. So, the things that business owners, leaders value are really those three things, although perhaps they don't say them outright, direct. But prefer to say them so that people really understand where I stand on those things as well.
Yeah, you want to set the expectation at the very beginning. So it's easy to communicate. It's just open communication for everyone to start working with you. I like it. I want to go a little bit deeper on the topic you mentioned about be authentic, be honest. I think that's absolutely true. I absolutely agree with you about that. However, I have been told, or I always tell people that when you go into the interview, when people ask, do you this experience, that experience, you may not have that experience in this profession that you're going to get the job, but you may have the experience in school, in the part-time job, maybe like working at the restaurant, working as a server. You may take advantage of those experience to explain about how you can apply those experience in this profession. I don't think that is considered to be as dishonest because it is a skill that they have to earn. So help me understand about when you say nothing. What do you when you get the question? What do you know? And you say nothing. I know you work. You have like you mentioned in your resume 12 years of experience working at is that clerk assistant position. And so you have experience at least organized documents, at least some office work. Why didn't you mention about those experience instead of saying nothing?
Because I knew in the grand scheme of things, I knew nothing. I knew certain things that were not going to really be relevant in terms of the job description of being a staff accountant and whatnot that could be happening. I could have said, well, I know how to go drive and pick up coffee, but it's not relevant to taxes. I know how to make copies or file or develop x-rays or, whatever else. Again, not relevant in terms of taxes. The question was really pointed towards in terms of your tax knowledge. Maybe I should have been more specific there. In terms of tax knowledge, what do you know? But even skill sets, like you have to understand that when you are young, and I count if you're in your 20s, you're young. Doesn't matter where in those 20s, you're young. The older you get, the more you really understand that. I'm reflecting on myself. I thought I knew a whole lot more than I did, for example. When you're young, even though you have experience doing things and whatnot, one, that experience isn't always relevant when it comes to the essence of an employer's position. And two, what do I want to say here exactly? I understood that the point of the question that he was asking was to self-measure and see if I was arrogant or if, I was someone who thought he knew it all or whatnot. All qualities really that end up being pretty toxic when it comes to, the work environment as well. One of the things that I look at when I'm looking at an applicant or whatnot is, you have to ask yourself, can I deal with sitting in the trenches with this person for 12 hours a day? So if the answer is no, because they're an egotist or they, think super highly of themselves or are someone who does not want to accept help or guidance, or there's someone who is, we'll call it, overly chatty without any kind of understanding of the circumstances or social setting that they're in, or or whatnot. These are all negative qualities that when you are shoulder to shoulder with someone for whatever it happens to be during tax season, for example, will affect morale, will affect the entire environment. And one of the things that I learned is it doesn't really matter how well someone performs. If they're toxic to your business, you need to get rid of them. And toxicity obviously comes in many forms, in many ways. Not everyone is just outwardly verbally abusive to fellow employees or whatnot. But basically, morale is something that needs to be kept up. It really does. It makes a huge difference. And it's just really important. So that's really the basis of that question, my mindset of it. and why I answered what I felt was the most authentic way I could.
I think it's very brave when you can give that answer for that very first job in this profession, because I don't think a lot of people will feel like they can answer that question nothing and then just be quiet. Because people will feel panic and say, oh my God, I have to speak so much. I have to prove myself. I have to show that I can do this. I can do that. Oh my God, what if they don't hire me? What if they don't see potential in me? So I like a very different aspect of viewpoints that you just share with me. I think is very interesting.